Babylonian Mathematics, Approximating Square Roots. Example 7.4. Approximate the square root of 834 using all three methods, using interpolation, the Indian method, and also the Babylonian method. We'll start with interpolation. I'm going to quote unquote cheat by going to my calculator and finding that the square root of 834 is 28 point something. And so therefore I know that the square root of 100 and 834 is in between 28 square, which is equal to 784, and 29 square, which is equal to 841. So the number that I'm going for, 28 point something, is in between. Okay, using interpolation, first I want to have the difference between the very top number and the very bottom number, and if I subtract I get a 57, and then I want to know the difference between the given number and the lower number. So the difference between these two numbers is 50. So I take 50 and divide it by 57. Of course, we're using our calculators to do most of this work. That's going to give 0.8772. I'm just rounding to the nearest four places. So my given number, the square root of 834, is going to equal 28 plus 0.8772, or 28.8772. So that's approximating the square root of 834 using interpolation. We're now going to use the Indian method. Now this one is the most difficult. This is the most complicated method. And I don't ask you to do it for homework because it's a nuisance. And obviously I'm not going to ask you to do it on an exam, but let's take a look at it anyway. You're using a formula, the square root of n. Oops, excuse me, this pen makes mistakes. The square root of n, which can be written as the square root of some number square plus another number, so a square plus h, is going to approximately equal h over 2 times a. I forgot the a. Well, you see the formula. It's on your lecture notes. Minus, and this is the fraction that's really a killer. First we have to take h over 2a and square that. And then the denominator is 2 times a plus h over 2a. All right, and again, this formula is presented much nicer in the lecture notes. All right, so to begin with, we need to identify a and h. That's the most important thing. And from our previous work with the square root of 834, we know that it's 28 square plus 50. So the square root of 834 is equal to the square root of 28 square plus 50. Okay, and again, if you had started off with this Indian method, you would have probably done the same thing to get that 28. That's that bottom number, that this square root is in between 28 and 29. All right, so from here I can determine that a is equal to 28 and h is equal to 50. So theoretically, this is not a big deal. You just take this value for a and this value for h, and you plug it into your formula, and you get your value. But to actually work it out is quite cumbersome. So, use your calculators to help you out as much as you need. I have, let's see, let's start with this. I've got the square root of 834, that's got to equal a plus h over 2a. So I have 28 plus 50 over 2 times 28. I'm just going to figure that out to be 56 right off the bat. Minus 50 over 56, that's h over 2a squared, all divided by 2 times 28 plus 50 over 56. And, again, it's just a question of really using your calculators to keep going. And I rounded everything when I worked this out to the nearest 4 places. So first I have 28 plus 0.8929. That's what 50 divided by 56 is. Minus, now the top, 50 over 56 quantity square, should give you 0.7972. And the bottom, 2 times 28 plus 50 over 56, should give you 57.7857. And again, I rounded everything to 4 places. So if we just use our calculator to get this sum, we end up with 28.8791. So the answer that I'm getting using the Indian method is 28.8791. All right, we're going to go back now and do it one more time using the Babylonian method. So let me erase. The Babylonian formula is very similar to the Indian formula, but it's slightly easier. So I do ask you to try this one on the homework. So the the Babylonian formula is the square root of n, which can be written as some number square plus another number, is approximately equal to a plus h over 2a minus h squared over 8a cubed. So that last fraction, everything's the same up till that last fraction, and that last fraction is indeed a little bit easier to use. So I have, again, a is equal to 28 and h is equal to 50. Since I've already done that work, I'm not going to redo it. So I know that the square root of 834 is going to approximately equal 28 plus 50 over 56 minus 50 square over 8 times 28 cubed. And I worked it out on my calculator, and I end up with 28 plus 0.8929 minus 0.0142. And so this answer is approximately 28.8787. So this is the answer I ended up getting using the Babylonian method. What I want to do is I want to take a look at all 3 answers at the same time. When I used interpolation, I ended up with 28.8772. When I used the Indian method, the answer I got was 28.8791. And when I used the Babylonian method, I ended up with 28.8787. And it's interesting that these numbers, if you rounded these numbers to the nearest hundredths place, they would all be 28.88. So they're all very, very close. Certainly interpolation is the easiest of the methods. But what's also very interesting is that if you square these numbers, if you go ahead and square them to see which one comes closest to 834, the interpolation gives us 833.8927, The Indian method gives us 834.0024. The Babylonian method gives us 833.9793. So the Indian method, for all its trouble, clearly is giving us the most accurate approximation of that square root. And I guess the Babylonian method comes in second. So I guess that means, the more work you do, the closer you get to the answer.